In this series, we go through certain articles, 2 articles per week, and we read through it, we understand whatever is stated there, and try to make sense of what is present. Let's go. So, this article, why was a laughing woman seen as lethal, not least to herself, was present in Psych. It is an adjacent publication online magazine for Aeon, and the author was Maggie Hennefeld, and it was edited by Sam Dresser. Let's go through the article. Can you really die from laughing too hard? From 1870 to 1920, hundreds of women in the United States allegedly suffered such a fate. Okay, so the author starts off by posing a question and then answering that question in a specific time period. This was actually true. People were dying from laughing too hard. One woman went to enjoy a comedy and furnished a tragedy when she laughed herself to death at a vaudeville show in Pittsburgh in 1897. Now, vaudeville show is basically an old timer show, and let's call it. I know of a tag team in WWE by the name of Vaudevillains. They used to have black and white screens and cartoonishly grotesque appearance Vaudevillains had. So Vaudeville show is more like old time entertainment show on screens in theaters, wherein the appearance of the participants is very garish. Okay. Bertha Pruitt was killed by a joke. Mrs. Polly Ann Jackson had not laughed so heartily in months, and a woman in Denver may have been about the first to see anything in Colorado to laugh at. Basically, lots of examples are given in order to substantiate the earlier statement that hundreds of women in the United States suffered the fate of death upon laughing too hard. Okay, according to the Dallas Morning News. But were these eye-popping obituaries real? So these descriptions that the author has used, and they are within quotes, these were lines that are mentioned in their obituaries. Obituaries are notes that you put out in publications, especially newspapers, when somebody dies. Often voiced in a mocking or glib tone, such as last laugh was not the best laugh, because once who laughs last laughs the longest is one of the idioms used in English. Last laugh was not best laugh, or score one for the pessimists. Basically, if you don't laugh, if you have a somber demeanor, then it is better for you because you don't get to die. So, often voiced in a mocking or glib tone, such as last laugh was not the best laugh, or score one for the pessimists. Slews of callous eulogies lampooned their victims, made fun of their victim. Eulogies are statements made about people who have passed away. Slews of scores of or multiple callous eulogies means careless statements about people who have passed away, lampooned their victims, made fun of their victims for having given up the ghost to such a ludicrous killer. Okay, having given up the ghost is having died to such a stupid reason. As I argue in my new book, Death by Laughter, this is Margaret in her new book, Death by Laughter, Female Hysteria and Early Cinema. This book came out in 2024. Fun-loving women were being terrorized into believing that their unrestrained pleasure could destroy them. So women were being given the idea that if you laugh too hard, you will die. At the same time, they were enticed by a ballooning entertainment industry to laugh louder, more convulsively, as in laughter which forces you to move your body in entirety, not just you're just not laughing with your face and your mouth, you're laughing with your entire body. Okay, more convulsively and with greater corporeal abandon than ever before. Laugh. Why? You'll have to tie them to the seat so that they won't roll all over the house in fits of convulsive laughter, declared the moving picture world in 1912. See, there are two contradictory ideas in play here. At one point, it is also being popularized that women who laugh uncontrollably die, and then entertainment products were being made in order to entice women to laugh by a great degree. So these are two contradictory ideas in play, It's almost as if the entertainment houses wanted women to die. There were even rumors that local tailors had conspired with traveling vaudeville comedians. Vaudeville, again, being used here. Uh, there were even rumors that local tailors had conspired with traveling vaudeville comedians after too many female spectators busted open their corset staves in spontaneous bursts of uncontrollable laughter. Corset is a portion of dress that women used to wear for covering their upper torso. So, there were rumors or there were conjecture that the tailors, in conjunction with vaudeville comedians, had decided they had made the stitching such that when women laughed too heartily, their corset busted open. It came apart. Imagine trying to laugh while wearing a whalebone corset. Okay, whalebone corset. Basically, whalebone was the material used in order to make that corset. The explosive popularity of cinema and other such amusements around the turn of the century liberated women. Okay. Variety shows, pleasure parks, phonograph parlors, roller rinks, dance halls, wax museums, and electricity displays numbered among the many uproarious spaces where women could at last savor their participation in mass culture and a new urban crowd, as Vanessa Schwartz write in Spectacular Realities 1999. Okay, so a lot of entertainment avenues were opened up to women and they could participate there and feel like they're part of the mass culture, they're part of the society in general, which would imply prior to this there were restrictive practices in place that did not allow women to participate as much in public spaces. Okay, often compared to a crazy dream or collective hallucination, cinema epitomized the potentials of popular news spectacles to transform the material conditions of ordinary experience for disenfranchised and minoritized audiences. Basically, cinema was a way by which people had their dreams realized. People, especially those people who led very ordinary life, led very mundane life, by way of cinema, they could aspire, they could dream, and they could see it in action in front of them. By the beginning of the 20th century, women were becoming political players. Now, the 20th century, when we say 20th century, it means 1901 to 2000. The 20th century ranges here, 1901. So, when they're saying beginning of the 20th century, perhaps the first decade or the first 2 decades are being referenced. By the beginning of the 20th century, women were becoming political players. Now, understand while we while we think of politics as something to do with representational democracy, political player need not politics in its simplest form. I'm sure you've heard of the term office politics. There is no representational democracy there. Politics is behaving or talking or engaging with other people in such a manner that you are able to convince them to do something that is beneficial for you. Basically, convincing the other people without outrightly convincing them, without outrightly making the argument why they should be supporting you. Anytime you engage in a behavior that convinces the other side or basically gets them around to your way of thinking so that they take a decision, basically they agree with you that something should happen and that benefits you, that is politics. Now here, when they say by the beginning of 20th century, women were becoming political players, as of now I haven't read further, so I don't know if this political player is referencing the general electoral politics or is it referencing gaining more power in the society. Let's read further. They lobbied the vote, took up space in public, walked off the job, protested for higher pay and better labor conditions, and migrated across the world to seek out new lives in melting pot urban metropolises. Okay, so essentially, this is all those ideas combined. Basically, they were engaging in behavior to get the other side to align with them. That is the political behavior being talked of. Lobbying for the vote is directly related to electoral politics, but took up space in public, walked off the job, resigned from the job, protested for higher pay and better labor conditions. All of that. This represents that they had greater representation in the society in general. Okay. Politically active women were irresistible subjects of representation for the new medium of cinema. In cinema, we had politically active women being represented in great volume. In early feminist films, such as The Dairymaid's Revenge, 1899, The Nursemaid's Strike, 1907, and The Suffragettes' Dream, 1909. Now, the suffragette movement refers to the movement in the early 20th century where women got the right to vote. Okay, so the suffragettes' dream, 1909, women break all the dishes in the kitchen. This is basically a depiction of how they are protesting against the status quo. Break all the dishes in the kitchen, wave protest signs that say down with the bosses, electrocute police officers, and weaponize freshly squeezed cow's milk to humiliate their sexual assaulters. Okay, wonderful. Basically, these women were active, they were playing an active role in the movies that were being created at that time. It is worth emphasizing that most of these movies were slapstick comedies. Now understand, the first line and the second line in conjunction should give you a wonderful insight. While women were becoming active participants in the neo medium cinema, they were being portrayed in a more engaged fashion, but their engagement was being viewed in a funny manner. They were more slapstick comedy rather than real stories. In cinema, if not in real life, women got to have the last laugh in retaliation against their male tormentors and capitalist oppressors. This is also to say, in movies, usually the women came out on top and it was a moment of celebration. This perhaps will link back to the earlier idea, often compared to a crazy dream or collective hallucination. These movies served as the victory dance or victory song for the disenfranchised or the minoritized audiences. Similarly, when women were being portrayed in these movies, these women won, if not in real life. They did not really have as much success in real life, but at least in cinema, the women had the last laugh. Women got to have the last laugh in retaliation against their male tormentors and capitalist oppressors. Okay. So it's no wonder that the old guard here would refer to male tormentors and the capitalist oppressors, started peddling morbid rumors of women's pandemic mortality by hysterical laughter. Now, see, pandemic and epidemic. Pandemic is a disease that is uh, spread far and wide. Epidemic is a disease that is spread but contained within a region. Epidemic is contained, pandemic is spread. So, women's pandemic mortality, nobody was safe from this. All women of the world were potential victims of this disease by hysterical laughter. As Margaret Atwood put it, men are afraid that women will laugh at them, and women are afraid that men will kill them. Hopefully, you understand how meaningful this line is. How meaningful this line is, and why the previous line also exists. Margaret Atwood made the statement that men are afraid that women will insult them. It would be a mark against their honor, and women were afraid of dying. Their respective fears were different in nature, and because women were afraid of dying, it makes all the more sense in the world to peddle rumors about the fact if you laugh uncontrollably, it would result in your death, as mentioned in so many examples in the first paragraph itself. Etiquette columnist even scolded smart ladies not to show their teeth, convulse their diaphragms, or make any noise at all while cachinating. Okay, so see, then there was a wave that said ladies are supposed to be silent, you're not supposed to laugh very loudly, you're not supposed to show your teeth, you're not supposed to convulse the diaphragm. Diaphragm is, I don't know if I know the Hindi word, but in our local tongue we call it bai. Diaphragm is something that keeps hopping periodically towards the lower part of your tummy and convulsing their diaphragms. What they're saying by this is, if you laugh like the ha 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 ha, if you laugh like this, you're convulsing your diaphragm in order to make that movement. So you should not be laughing with your whole body, and you should not make any noise at all while catching it. Okay, I don't know the correct pronunciation of this word, but I'm guessing this cachinating is described in the next line. This technique was known as the new laugh. So new laugh being, you don't make any noise, you may smile, but you will definitely not laugh out loud. Meanwhile, vaudeville houses and Nickelodeon storefronts lured in thrill-hungry patrons by blaring laughing songs, phonograph records from outside the theater. On the one hand, you had a movement that said ladies are supposed to behave a certain way, they're not supposed to laugh. On the other hand, vaudeville houses and Nickelodeon storefronts. I don't know what Nickelodeon means, I only know it is a cartoon based channel. Just like Cartoon Network, there was a competing channel, Nickelodeon. So I'm guessing Nickelodeon storefronts is something to do with basic entertainment. And lured in thrill hungry patrons, they try to attract customers by uh, playing the laughing song on their sound machines. In the wise words of the notorious laughing girl, Sally Strembler, ha ha he he ho ho, loosely paraphrased, abandon restraint all ye who enjoy themselves here. So I'm guessing Sally Strembler was one of the spokespeople for some vaudeville house or some Nickelodeon storefront, basically a representative of them, and then encouraging people to engage in unfettered laughter. The backdrop to the widespread panic about these unleashed and uninhibited women was the 19th century's raging obsession, female medical hysteria. Okay, this is where the medical aspect of it comes into being. Hysteria for a long period of time was a genuine medical condition, and hopefully you know something about medical science development. A lot of medical experiments and a lot of initial medical research was only done on the male body, and for the female body, same results, same outcomes were sort of transposed. And when they did not work, because you did not have a defense for why your so-called experiments have not worked on female bodies, because they were clearly different, then a lot of times it was attributed to hysteria, it was attributed to women being as in witches and whatnot. Basically, hysteria was an easy go-to move for the lack of or the misogyny in the medical research that had happened up till that point. So, the backdrop of the widespread panic about these unleashed and uninhibited women was the 19th century raging obsession, female medical hysteria. The public was morbidly fascinated by the spectacle of women afflicted by mysterious physical ailments with seemingly no organic basis in the body. See, it is referencing the same idea. Basically, when the doctor couldn't figure out what was wrong with the woman, they said, oh, she's suffering from hysteria. From the Greek word hystera, meaning uterus. Hystera means uterus. So, this is a disease that was only suffered by entities that had a uterus, and uterus, at least in the male sense, is only present with females. So, only females can suffer from hysteria. Absolutely wonderful diagnosis. From the Greek word hystera, meaning uterus, by 1883, the diagnosis encompassed nearly 20% of all cases at the Paris Salpêtrière Hospital, 20 times its 1% rate in 1845. See, in 1845, when you did not know, you did not know. But when you had a go-to move available, when you had a recourse available to blame something, oh, it is hysteria. From 1845 to 1883, nearly 20% of all cases became hysteria. According to the feminist historian Elaine Showalter's The Female Malady. Okay, and this The Female Malady must be a written work. It came out in 1987. The French neurologist Jean-Martin Charcot photographed his most famous hysterics Hysteric would be a woman suffering from hysteria. So, neurologist, this fellow, photographed his most famous patients of hysteria and hypnotized them on stage in front of 400 weekly spectators. We should also tell you there was a performance angle to the art of medicine at that time. This is a neurologist and he's doing it in front of 400 weekly spectators, which is very weird. At least culturally, it would be very weird if a doctor in this day and age put their patients on display for weekly spectators. Okay. Charcot's star patient, Marie Blanche Whitman, was known as the queen of the hysterics, as in the top of the crop among the women suffering from hysteria. Women like Whitman could assume impossible acrobatic positions, described as clownism, impossible acrobatic positions, described as clownism. Charcot was also a big fan of the circus. While suffering epileptic convulsions and erotic hallucinations. Epilepsy is a disease in which you start to have seizures. Convulsions is, of course, contortions and erotic hallucinations, sexually charged fantasies or imaginations in play. It was quite a scene. The amphitheater overflowed with a multicolored audience drawn from tout Paris. Okay, people came from far and wide to view this. Recounted the psychiatrist Alex Manthe in the 1929 autobiography. So Alex Manthe wrote his autobiography, which was published in 1929, and he was writing a record of these shows, weekly shows that Jean-Marco uh, Charcot was putting up. Okay, and uh, this fellow, as in Axel Manthe, mentioned that people from all walks of life from different locations came over to watch this. Authors, journalists, leading actors and actresses, fashionable demi-mondaines, all full of morbid curiosity to witness the startling phenomena of hypnotism, almost forgotten since the day of Mesmer and Braid. Okay, so people came there with curiosity. Why is this happening? How is this happening? How would it take form? People turned up, and people from, as in authors, journalists, leading actors and actresses, fashionable demi-mondaines. I have absolutely no clue what this means, but demigod I know. So demigod, demagogue, I know both those words. So I'm guessing this would be, let's say, halfway to royalty maybe, but I don't know. Fashionable demi-mondaines or new age fashion icons. I have absolutely no clue. This is a word that I will engage in researching after reading this article in entirety. All full of morbid curiosity, witnessing the startling phenomena of hypnotism, which had been almost forgotten since the days of Mesmer and Braid. So Mesmer and Braid must be accomplished hypnotists, and the skill of hypnotism has not been as much in vogue. It has not been a part of the zeitgeist in the recent past. But when Jean-Marc Charcot brought it back, people were curious and wanted to see it. Even the French stage actress Sarah Bernhardt visited Charcot's psychiatric theater to observe a staging of grand hysterie in preparation for a demanding role in Adrian Lecouvreur. I don't know what this means. Grand hysterie would be the hysterics, as in the actions of a hysteric person, for her demanding role in Adrian Lecouvreur. I don't know what this precise second word is. Perhaps a French person would, but this seems like the name of her movie in which Sarah is playing a role. All of this leads to the question, what is hysteria? Now, a long debunked diagnostic category. Debunked. Basically, there is nothing called hysteria. There is nothing called hysteria. Medically, there is nothing called hysteria. It was simply invented or created in order, just like in accounting. I don't know if you're famous with accounting. A lot of times the books of accounts that you maintain, they don't balance. When they don't balance, accountants, for the time being, in order to maintain balance, they create a suspense account. And then when a reconciliation or some sort of adjustment is seen which would lead to balancing of the books, the suspense account becomes zero. So very much in that thought line, you can see, when they did not know what was the ailment that the woman was suffering from, they called it hysteria. But now it is, now that idea has been debunked in entirety. The mysterious ailment ran roughshod over the 19th century psychiatric medicine. Symptoms of the disease ranged from ordinary exhaustion, boredom, fatigue, and nervousness to epileptic orgasms. Now think, somebody being tired is also hysteric, somebody is suffering from boredom is also hysteric, somebody fatigued is also hysteric, and somebody is having epileptic or seizures and orgasms. Epileptic orgasms, basically you are having seizures and you are also having a sexual release. That person is also hysteric. The range is quite wide. Uncontrollable hiccuping, clownish acrobatics. So if somebody was funny, let's say somebody was funny and had good body balance and could balance themselves, clownish acrobatics, that person is also hysterical. And trans-species metamorphosis. Although I'm fairly certain there was no trans-species metamorphosis, there may have been mutations. If you are a fan of the comic world, you will know mutations need not necessarily, just because there are mutations, you don't become a mutant in entirety. Mutations is the usual human function of an organ or a part that you have, that becomes slightly different. So you could have mutations in the way that the webbing between your fingers is present, it could be slightly bigger. That is a mutation. That does not make you a mutant in entirety. You are not an X-Men anymore. Right now, you're not an X-Men, because X-Men sort of skips a lot of generations in mutations. Basically, people are becoming very, very advanced, rapidly advancing when they become mutants. This change, the rate of change in human history is fairly gradual. So when we say mutations, it can happen. Now this trans-species metamorphosis, my best guess would be, if they have like any small little mutations, they are told trans-species metamorphosis, because the literal meaning of this would be something like Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter, where you are able to they called it transfiguration there, where you could entirely turn into some other animal. That is not being referenced. It is small little mutations or small little changes that happen in people. Its origins defied scientific understanding. The origins of hysteria. Its origins defied scientific understanding, arising from nowhere and then vanishing without a trace. And its symptoms, see, arising from nowhere. The cause of somebody being afflicted with hysteria, it was not known. And then it also got resolved of its own accord, vanishing without a trace. And its symptoms assumed such a perplexing range of extremes that it was often disparaged as a mere waste basket for any inexplicable affliction. And they have gone on to mention the precise function of what hysteria was supposed to be. It was simply, when you did not know what the patient is suffering from, label it as hysteria and move on. Your work will be done there. Okay. Next. Yet, nowhere in all the psychiatric case histories was laughter considered at length as a symptom. Remember, the article started with, can laughing uncontrollably lead to death? And for hysteria, which was attributed to as the major cause why women were dying, was later on in the medical journals, laughing at length or laughing uncontrollably was not mentioned as the cause for or a symptom of hysteria, despite the laughing mad woman's persistence as a popular trope of sensation literature, gothic theatre, and phantasmagoric visual culture. Okay, popular trope of, let's say, artistic representation. Although laughing mad woman was artistic representation of hysteria, hysteria was not, as in laughing for an extended period of time was not really a symptom of hysteria. In Pierre Janet Comprehensive Overview, The Major Symptoms of Hysteria, 1907, this is a book published in 1907, there is only one mention of hysteric laughter, an involuntary reaction to sedation for an illicit abortion. Involuntary reaction, not something you willfully engage in, something that happens to you, to sedation. And sedation is when you are given some sort of numbing gas or something. What do we call it? Some sort of gas. What is it called? When you go for operations, before that they give you a gas so that you don't feel the pain. I'm forgetting the term, but sedation is you the sensations being numbed. I can't for the life of me remember that word, but okay. For an illicit abortion, illegal, unregulated, something that was not allowed by the laws of the time. It is something with A. It is something with A. Asphyxiation is dying. What is that term? I'm not remembering that term. Anesthesia. So sedation, anesthesia. When you get anesthesia, you are sedated. Sedation, when involuntary reaction to receiving anesthesia during an illicit abortion, something that was not sanctioned, which is briefly sandwiched between incidents of serial hiccuping and medieval epidemics of meowing, whinnying, and barking. See, meowing is something cats do, whinnying is something that horses do, and barking is something dogs do. This is perhaps what they were referring to when they were saying trans-species metamorphosis. So if people start making these sounds, they're having trans-species metamorphosis. Okay. Incredibly, hysteria was not retired from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders until the late 1970s. Despite not having any basis in medical science, as mentioned earlier, arising from nowhere and vanishing without a trace, it continued to be a part of the medical journals, approximate cause for the pain being suffered or the discomfort being suffered by the patient up until 1970s. When we think of laughter as hysterical, we often associate that idiom with ordinary pleasure and contagious enjoyment. When people are laughing, let's say, when people are laughing without restraint when they are happy, that we usually think of as hysterical. But until the very end of 19th century, the notion of laughing hysterically was the last thing you would ever want to experience with your body. Right now, hysterical laughter is something you would enjoy, you would look forward to. But up until the very end of 19th century again would be 1801 to 1900. In this time frame, you would want to avoid laughing hysterically at all costs, because once you do that, you will die. Prior to that time, to laugh hysterically meant to suffer extravagantly from unresolvable mixed feelings such as despair and ambition, disgust and arousal, or hopelessness and determination. Hysterical laughter primarily afflicted nervous or emotional women. It's almost as if men cannot feel despair and ambition, or disgust and arousal, or hopelessness and determination simultaneously. Hysterical laughter primarily afflicted nervous or emotional women whose morbid ambivalence paved the way to their uncontrollable, mirthless convulsions. Convulsions, not convolutions, convulsions. Mirthless without happiness. But with the onset of raucous modernity, laughing songs, vaudeville extravaganzas, pleasure parks, and crazy moving pictures. Cinema in the early part was known as moving pictures, crazy moving pictures. The gendered pathos of emotional hysteria fueled the insatiable contagions of wild mass culture. Gendered would mean, let's say, tempered emotion is in the tempered response or the unwillingness to engage with emotional hysteria. This, the restrictive response, led to insatiable contagions of wild mass culture. Because it was being restricted in one way, it had to come out. The best example of this that I can potentially think, you would see in societies where, let's say, physical intimacy and sex is viewed as a taboo. In those societies, you would have, uh, when people become older, there is a lot more sexual activity happening. There is a lot more unprotected sexual activity happening because it was so restricted. It was looked at so immorally, and no, this you can't do this, you can't do that. And then, as and when you do have the ability and opportunity to engage in it, it explodes. There are lucky few, at least I'm talking in context of India, and perhaps my generation, because I don't know what is the culture and setup right now. But back in my day, you got all your information about the human body from friends who was informed by an elder brother or somebody there or somebody here, and then when it and a lot of misinformation was spread at that time. I got it was very late, as in when I say late, I mean, late teens when I got to know a lot of information that I have is incorrect. So, uh, I'm guessing this is what is also being referenced here. Hysteria, restrictive, and then it led to an outpouring, it led to an outburst that led to contagions of wild mass culture. Sensations of joyous laughter and unruly madness collided in the raucous bodies of pleasure seeking women around the coming of the 20th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, there were a lot of females who wanted to feel happy, who wanted to laugh uncontrollably because they had been brought up on the idea that no, you should not be doing that, it would not be safe for you. The explosion of women into the public sphere and political life via mass culture made hysterical laughter fun as long as it didn't kill you. Okay, so even right now, it's not like hysterical laughter as an idea had been debunked. It was more like you could laugh for a lot, and there was thrill seeking involved here. Now, there is a threshold beyond which, if you laugh, you will die. So, you can laugh as much as you want until the point it kills you, as long as it didn't kill you. Okay, so perhaps you can think of this as a lot of people justify their drug consumption this way. As long as I'm not ODing and I'm just enjoying myself and having a happy high, it is fine. Or even let's say nitrous oxide poisoning, when people, there is helium and nitrous oxide laughing gas consumption is as in laughing gas consumption is very dangerous, yet people think laughing gas in small quantities you can manage, but then if you get become addicted to it, it is very problematic. So uh, uh, it was very, the idea that you can extend yourself up until the last point beyond which there will be damage, that is a very flawed idea to have anyway. Film exhibitors even offered daredevil spectators life insurance for death by laughter at dangerously funny slapstick comedies. You see, you will die if you laugh too much, yet we will present something that will make you laugh too much, and we'll offer you life insurance policies. Come watch our show, it will be so much fun for you. If you die, you will get this life insurance money. If not, you will enjoy yourself and go back. Okay. Legal hazards engulf the comedy industry today, but the target has shifted from laughing spectator to edgy practitioner. Okay. Comedians face litigious backlash for everything from plagiarism to insult humor to mother-in-law jokes, exemplified by the mother-in-law suit against Sunda Kronquist, whose outraged in-laws sued her in 2009 for making too many mother-in-law jokes in her stand-up act. Okay, so there must be some comic who got sued by her mother-in-law for making too many mother-in-law jokes in her stand-up act. In contrast, Charlize Theron absolved Sacha Baron Cohen. Sacha Baron Cohen is a popular actor. Charlize Theron is a popular actor. I know these two people. After she was hospitalized for 5 days from laughing too hard while watching Borat. She had a herniated disc. Hernia means a body part has moved to some section of the body it should not be where it should not be. So herniated disc was the cause why she went to the hospital, but she wouldn't say as if. But it gets portrayed as she laughed too hard at Sacha Baron Cohen, and this makes for a good article in Entertainment Weeklies. So she absolved Sacha Baron Cohen. उसकी गलती नहीं है. It's not his fault. After she was hospitalized for 5 days from laughing too hard while watching Borat. Okay, Borat is a movie. Okay, from Kazakhstan and everything. Today, we fear nothing more than wrong or injurious laughter. When we say this is more to do with offensive statements or offensive jokes are being referenced here, not the way laughter was injurious earlier where it led to death, hysteria. Culture wars are stake on the slippery line between outrage and excitement. Okay. We get offended by everything. Culture wars. How can he say something about this way and that way? But the point of jokes is to give us access to the taboo, temporarily liberating what would otherwise have to be remain unsaid and unthought. The author here is making the argument that, see, understand, jokes are supposed to take us to those domains, take us to those regions where you cannot go by yourself, because it would be too rude, it would be too unsavory, it would be too uncivil. But jokes have that freedom, and the entire point of jokes, the entire point of comedy should be to take us to regions or talk about things that you wouldn't be able to talk about in the restrictive society that you're living in. So, wild laughter stirs up unrealized collective desires. It flirts with dangerous impulses, risky attachments, and inconvenient thoughts, unleashing an extremity of feeling that spreads through your whole body and sparks new sensations of community and solidarity. Think of it this way: it flirts with dangerous impulses, risky attachments, and inconvenient thoughts. Again, the domain that you are not comfortable going to, the jokes are supposed to take you there, and it sort of lightens the mood. It sort of lightens the mood for you and makes you feel more accepted, more a part of the community when you realize you are not the only one thinking of those silly thoughts. There are other people also. There are other people also having similar thoughts. It is not that you are a great sinner, you are separate from the society, you have these weird thoughts. Other people also have those sorts of thoughts. Okay? When a cynical rumor or a utopian fantasy, whether a cynical rumor or a utopian fantasy, the possibility of death by laughter may be just too beautiful for this reality. There is no death that is happening by laughter. It is an idea that is just too beautiful for this reality. Understand, when I say this is too beautiful for this reality, I am essentially saying it cannot happen. This is an impossible situation. Okay, so the entire passage, the entire article starts off with a historical perspective of late 19th century and early 20th century. Women being diagnosed with hysteria, women dying, some examples of that. Then the dichotomous situation wherein you will die if you laugh too much, and then entertainment houses providing content that will make you laugh too much, and then the liberalization and increased political role of women was being talked of. But in most of the cinematic representations, it was more slapstick comedy than real cinema or realistic representation of cinema. Then we started having rumors of, oh, if you laugh too much, it will be a problem. And this was on account of the fact women feared death and men feared being laughed at. So that is where the author is hinting at the source of the rumors, the source of the beginning of the statement that if you laugh too much, you will die. Then medical hysteria had become a popular diagnosis, and there was this neurologist John Martin Charcot, who had weekly shows where his most famous hysterics patients were put on display, and among them there was Mary Whitman. She had epileptic convulsions and could assume impossible acrobatic positions, quite insane. Lot of people from different parts of the world, different parts of the country came over to see it. It served as a learning point for actors, actresses, authors, all sorts of people. Now, hysteria was a medical ailment that was attributed to females, but it was debunked and it was generally used. It was not scientific in nature at all. It was generally used when people could not really find the proximate cause of some disease. Whenever they couldn't, they simply said it was hysteria. And if you went through the medical journal, medical records, prolonged laughter was never really a symptom of hysteria. It was mentioned once in a book, but then it was accompanied by uncontrollable hiccuping and something else. Serial hiccuping and medieval epidemics of meowing, whinnying, and barking, and all those sorts of silly sounds, animal sounds. And when we think of laughter as hysterical, in the earlier times, it meant death was near. Now we are seeking a good time. We are seeking, we want to be hysterically laughing. But then the tone changes with the modern age coming in. What is funny for one person, acha, but with the not that is in the last paragraph. So prior to that, we had hysteria should be controlled, and again the dichotomous idea. No, hysteria. It is okay as you can laugh uncontrollably, you can laugh a little hysterically as long as it doesn't kill you. And then, in order to make it more appealing, some film distributors also offered life insurance for shows that they felt was absolutely funny. Okay, and then we get into legal hazards engulf the comedy industry today. People are being sued by their mother-in-laws for making too many mother-in-law jokes. Some artist, Sunda Kronqvist, was mentioned for this. Then Charlize Theron absolved Sacha Baron Cohen for putting her in the hospital for 5 days after laughing too hard on watching Bora, although she had herniated disc, which was the actual cause for her being in the hospital. And now we have come to a day and age where we don't mind laughing, but we mind laughing at the wrong thing. So let's say you hear a racist joke, or if you hear a sexist joke and you end up laughing and you get cancelled for it in the modern lingo, that would be the concern. But then jokes are not supposed to be very, very compassionate. Jokes are not supposed to be very, very society, following the norms of society. Because jokes are supposed to take us to the domains that we are unwilling to go to, following the rules of the civil society. Jokes are supposed to talk about taboo topics, and when these taboo topics are talked of and you see the reaction of other people, then you realize you are not the only one thinking of these things, and it gives you a newfound sense of solidarity and hope. Okay, these are not weird ideas, I'm part of this. You can have weird thoughts as long as you don't act upon them. You can have weird thoughts, which is something that Harry Potter also highlighted. No, remember when the hat was put on top of Harry, the cap thought he would best fit in Slytherin, but he said no, I want to go to Gryffindor. So he went to Gryffindor, and later on, Dumbledore and Harry had a discussion about this. It is not who we are and what we think of that makes us that defines us. It is more what we do. Similar statement in Batman. It is not who I am underneath, it is what I do that defines me. So the activity that you engage in, that should define you, not the thoughts and ideas that you have. This is also a beautiful dichotomous idea that you should understand. Very often when we are judging other people, we are absolutely fine in judging them by their actions. But when it comes to ourselves, we are far too eager and willing to forgive ourselves for our mistake because we had good intentions. Intentions mean nothing. The action that you took is the only thing that matters. So for all those weeks, when you thought this week I will study, but then something came up and you did not study, but I had this, no, doesn't matter. You did not study, so you did not study. There is no, I had planned to, but then this unexpected thing came up. If this unexpected thing came up, it would have happened once, or you would have made adjustments. If this XYZ study thing was important for you, you would have made adjustments. You cannot possibly claim that your schedule was so tightly packed that you could not find time for something that you claim is the highest priority in your life. And that is the end of this article. All the theorizing and all the yarn giving aside, the article had 1429 words. There were 56 sentences. The Flesch Kincaid grade level was 10.2, which means it is simple to understand. There were certain words that you needed to know the meaning of, vaudeville and everything. If you know, great. And the reading E score, this is like a moderately difficult article to read. The reading E score, the higher the score, the easier the article. Hopefully you had fun, you understood some things, you also got to know a lot of what goes on in my head. That will be all for this episode. See you in the next one. Goodbye.